Welcome! Today we are going to review this Volkswagen Kombi. Why? Well, because we can. Alright, I know we generally review Chinese market-only cars or cars from Chinese brands on this channel, but some opportunities are just too good to pass up. When somebody came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to drive one of the most iconic vehicles ever produced?" Of course I said yes. I want to start with a little experiment. On the right, obviously, I have the Volkswagen Kombi. On the left, I have the Volkswagen Polo that we use for filming videos. What I want you to do is guess which one was built first. It's got to be the Kombi, right? I mean, it looks like it drove straight out of the 1970s. But in fact, that's a 2011, that's a 2014. This car was produced in one form or another for 56 years. By 2013, it was only being built and sold in the Brazilian market. But that year, the Brazilian government decided they were going to pass stricter safety and emissions regulations, and its production run finally had to come to an end. This is number 806 of only 1,200 final or last edition Volkswagen Kombis. That makes it one of the last ones ever built. These last edition cars all came with a retro-style two-tone paint job, and I think it is absolutely perfect. With their cab-forward design and huge greenhouse, these look like nothing else on the road today because regulations make them pretty much impossible to produce. The result is that this is easily the most attention-grabbing vehicle we've ever driven on this channel. Sitting inside of the interior, you start to see some hints that this car was not produced in the 1970s. For example, the radio head unit here is obviously relatively new. The rest of the car, however, is quite retro, including these bench seats, the exposed steering column down here as well. Now, this particular car has some quirks and features, we'll say. For example, this is an aftermarket air conditioning unit. Works surprisingly well, actually, as well as an aftermarket rear view mirror with integrated camera, currently not working. There's also this very ugly bundle of wires down here below the dashboard, but I'm going to give Volkswagen Brazil a little bit credit and say it didn't look like that when it left the factory. The back seats of the Kombi crank up the retro feels to 11. There are 2 rows of bench seats, and apart from the middle one in the 3rd row for some reason, none of them have seat belts, not even a lap belt. So if you want to go anywhere, you're going to need to find, we'll see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of your bravest friends. There's also no headliner from the 2nd row back, so NVH is going to be kind of an issue. Coming around to the back, if we open this up, we find a surprisingly high cargo loading floor. That's because underneath this very cool wood paneling, the same that we have up front, is your rear-mounted engine. Now, when this car hit the Brazilian market around 2013, it cost the equivalent of about $35,000. Now, the owner of the car now spent close to, or more than, $100,000 to import it. The question is this a $100,000 driving experience? Let's find out. Oh no, oh no, oh no, hold on. The door opened. The door opened. Hold on. We'll get it. We'll get it. It's all right. That happens sometimes. That happens. That happens. Let's try it again. Let's try it one more time. Here we go. Okay, now that we've managed to get the door properly closed, let's go back to that question. Is this a $100,000 driving experience? In short, no, definitely not. This thing is, well, even though it was built in 2013 and 2014, the driving experience is definitely like something out of the 1950s. It's loud, it's slow, and it's uncomfortable. This doesn't have the flat 4 of the original. It instead has a EA111 4-cylinder, inline 4-cylinder. But it only delivers about 78 horsepower, and it does so very, very slowly. The rest of the driving experience could best be described as sloppy. Let's start with this manual transmission. This is a 4-speed manual, and 4 speeds is fine. You don't need a 5 or a 6-speed transmission in a car like this. The problem is, it is imprecise, we'll say. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes whether you're actually in neutral or in gear, which gets kind of embarrassing when you stall this at a stoplight. There's just so much slop. This thing moves around so much. The same can be said for the steering wheel, which, by the way, is about the same size as the rings of Saturn, roughly. It is very reminiscent of a Volkswagen, not a Volkswagen bus, but an actual, real, full-size bus. And that's how you have to drive it. There's no relaxed driving in this car. It is one of the most involved driving experiences I've ever had in my entire life, because you are constantly making small corrections to keep yourself where you want to be in the lane. It's very difficult to actually drive relaxed with one hand, which is how I tend to drive cars, to be honest. So I guess it's very engaging. Now, one of the biggest reasons that this car was phased out of production was safety. And that has to do with the design, obviously. This is a cab-forward design, which means that there is very, very little between you and whatever you're going to run into in front of you. There's no engine, there's no firewall, there's no crash structure. Right now, my left foot is resting on the headlight housing, which doesn't really make me feel particularly safe. This steering wheel also is just a steering wheel. It's not got any airbags, and there's no secret airbags hidden in here either. It's overall, I get why it is that they stopped making this car, at least from a safety perspective, and why it is you really don't see cars like this on the road anymore. Of course, the owner of this car and people like him around the world don't buy it because of the power or handling or refinement. They buy it because of the way it makes them feel, or perhaps most importantly, how it makes other people feel. I mentioned earlier that this is easily the most attention-grabbing vehicle we've ever tested on this channel. But it's not the same kind of attention that you get when you drive a Ferrari or a Rolls-Royce. See, those cars tend to be kind of unapproachable, whereas this car fills spectators with such a wave of nostalgia and joy that they feel completely comfortable walking straight up to it and touching it, or asking questions about it, or simply admiring it. The reality is that this isn't a car that you drive for your own benefit. You drive it for the benefit of others. You tolerate the danger, the lack of performance, and the expense in order to enjoy the looks of sheer joy and surprise on people's faces when you drive by. Whereas some jerk like me would have just spent $100,000 on another 911 or something. So thank you, Combi drivers of the world, for making it a better place to live in. All right, that's all for today. We'll be back soon with more reviews of Chinese cars.